Hello, this is Dr. J here with Let's Play Red Alert. This, together with the original Command and Conquer, are probably candidates for being tied for my favorite game of all time. So I'm going to say some opening words with my thoughts about this game and how I'm going to approach this LP. If you don't care about that and you just want to dive right into the action, feel free to skip ahead. So the reason that I say Command & Conquer and Red Alert are kind of tied as candidates for my all-time favorite games. The original Command & Conquer, I prefer the story, the characters, and the aesthetic of that game. The sort of contemporary/near-future look, versus in Red Alert it has more of a retro future tech look, which I still like. I like it quite a bit, in fact. I just like the Command & Conquer look, and again, the story and characters better. However, Red Alert makes some very important improvements in terms of the artificial intelligence compared to Command & Conquer. In particular, the AI has the ability to actually deal with walls. They will destroy walls in their way, so you can't just wall off your base or part of the map and completely shut down the AI that way. The AI also has the ability to identify non-contiguous zones, so it won't bug out and try sending its units to an island that they can't reach like it will in the original Command & Conquer. Another important improvement is that the scripting engine in Red Alert is much more flexible and dynamic than the one in Command & Conquer, which means that you can make much more varied and interesting missions in certain ways. Something that I've certainly taken advantage of in many custom missions and campaigns that I have made for this game. And in fact, when you include the amount of time that I've spent modding this game, the original Red Alert, there is no question that I have spent more time on this game than any other video game I've ever played in my life, by far. So those are my thoughts on the original CNC and Red Alert, and why I can't quite make up my mind which of them I like better. As for the approach I'm going to take to LPing this game, in my LP of the original Command & Conquer, I jumped back and forth between the GDI and NOD campaigns at moments that were narratively appropriate to build a cohesive storyline, because both the GDI and NOD campaigns can be considered fully canon. And in fact, events in one campaign often make events in the other campaign make more sense, or make them more meaningful. So the two campaigns mesh together with each other very well. In Red Alert, that goes completely out the window, because the Allied and Soviet campaigns are not both canon. The Allied campaign is canon, the Soviet campaign is not. In the Allied campaign, the Allies win the war. In the Soviet campaign, the Soviets win the war. They're mutually exclusive with each other. So I'm not going to be jumping back and forth between the two campaigns. I'm going to do all Allies, then all Soviets. Because again, they just don't form a cohesive narrative together. They contradict each other. Another difference is in Command & Conquer, I did all of the campaign missions, and then I did all of the extra missions and expansion missions. So I kept them completely separated. In this playthrough, I'm actually going to intersperse the expansion missions, Counterstrike and Aftermath, through my playthrough of the original campaigns. For two reasons. One, some of the extra missions in the expansions actually explicitly take place during certain points in the original campaign storyline. The Allied Counterstrike missions for the fall of Greece and Siberian conflict especially come to mind. Those very explicitly take place at certain points in the storyline. And also, unlike in Command & Conquer, where very explicitly certain technologies become available at certain times, like the Mammoth tank, the Obelisk of Light, the Orca, the Stealth tank, the Flame tank, none of those units become available until pretty late in the original campaign, which means any expansion missions that have any of those units can't take place at any point in the story until very close to the end. Whereas in Red Alert, there's actually very little of that gradual introduction of technologies. There's a little bit of it. The MiG becomes available in Soviet Mission 10, I think. And of course, the Chronosphere and the Iron Curtain are major plot developments. But for the most part, you actually start seeing very advanced units very early on, like mammoth tanks and Tesla coils and so on, gap generators in the campaign, which means it's much easier to intersperse expansion missions without introducing contradictions. And so that's something I'm going to be doing in order to hopefully make this playthrough a little fresh, is interleaving expansion missions at narratively appropriate points with the original campaign missions. And then lastly, in the original CNC playthrough I did every single variation of every single mission. I'm not going to be doing that here, because in Command & Conquer, many of the variations have a lot of differences from each other. Oftentimes, they're just straight up completely different missions with different objectives. Even when they have the same objectives, often the maps are different enough from each other that playing them makes for a pretty different experience. That's not true in this game. You always get the same mission with the same objectives, only the map changes, and the vast majority of the time the maps are similar enough to each other that playing the different variations just feels redundant and doesn't feel all that different. So for the most part, I'm not going to be doing the different variations of the missions. I can only think of one exception, and that's Allied Mission 3. I'll do both variations of that. Otherwise, I think I'm just going to be doing one variation of each mission. Okay, so that's how I'm going to be approaching this playthrough. That's enough babbling from me. Let's go ahead and watch the introduction, and then we're going to dive into it starting with the Allied campaign. Let's go.
Stop playing with that thing.
I've just got to adjust this.
Give me the sequence calculations. Now!
They're already done.
I wonder if it will be raining.
Stand by.
Herr Hitler!
Ja, was ist los? Ich habe keine Zeit, hier rumzustehen.
Ja, ich verstehe.
Did you find him?
Hitler is out of the way.
Congratulations, Professor. With Hitler removed...
Time will tell. Sooner or later. Time will tell.
So that's the introduction to Red Alert. Very different universe altogether from Command and Conquer. Einstein traveled back in time and removed Hitler, and as a result, the Soviet Union has risen to power and is going to launch a massive invasion of Europe, and Germany is going to be on the side of the Allies. Now, I don't generally care for time travel as a story device, because it never really makes much sense, and it doesn't here either, because if Einstein can just travel into the past and remove Hitler, why wouldn't he just do the same thing and remove Stalin? And any other evil world leader who caused massive world wars? Doesn't make a lot of sense. To me, the more important factor is that this is an alternate history where what if Nazi Germany didn't arise, and instead World War II was more of just a Eurasian conflict instead of a global conflict in which the Soviet Union fights against the countries of Europe, which is a very interesting premise for a war game. So I do like that. Well, with that as the premise behind the game, let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to play on normal because my policy is that games are generally designed to be played on normal, so it's generally the way the game is meant to be played. So I only play on harder difficulty if that is significantly more fun for some reason, or if there's exclusive content you only get by playing on hard. Neither of those things is true in the case of this game. The way it implements hard mode isn't by, for example, making the AI more difficult, which would be cool and fun. It's by making your units crappier and the AI's units better, which is a very lazy and stupid way of implementing hard mode. I don't like it, so I won't be playing on hard. And we'll start with the Allied campaign.
Commander?
The last transmission?
0900 hours. Since then, nothing.
Perhaps Einstein escaped?
Too much to hope for, General. He would have contacted us by now. This is classified.
I know.
I sent for her.
General von Essling, she is a civilian.
That's why I don't get killed.
Commander, this is Tanya Adams, a professional volunteer. She will work with you on this mission. Somewhere inside this research center, the Soviets hold Albert Einstein. We need him back, immediately. Get Tanya inside, so she can get Einstein out. Once you have located him, bring him back to your drop-off point for immediate evacuation. Be careful. The base is heavily fortified, but not invincible.
Their weakness is power. Black out the base and nothing will stop you. Good luck.
Okay, so there we're introduced to most of the main characters of the Allied faction, General von Essling, General Stavros, and the Commando Tanya. Now, Tanya's not terribly credible as an elite commando, although at least in this game she's not a softcore porn pinup girl, like in future games. Not that I have anything at all against pretty girls in video games, but a pinup girl isn't exactly the most credible as a hardcore commando type. Anyways, our mission is to rescue Einstein from this Soviet base. We see the Tesla coil just zap that poor civilian to death, but we hit these barrels and it destroys a power plant, which causes the power to go offline, and now we can just waltz into the base with Tanya. The rest of the units in this mission are completely irrelevant. We shoot those guys, free Einstein. We just have to move Einstein back up to the helicopter. And it says Allied reinforcements have arrived. If we look down here, we see a bunch of cruisers appear and begin shelling the Soviet base. They are green colored, which means they're under AI control. Internally, AI corresponds to the country of England, but I don't think that actually has any real meaning as far as the mission story is concerned. But we can go ahead and watch them absolutely obliterating the Soviet base for us. These guys will come to attack us. Tanya can easily kill them. Let's go ahead and get Einstein into the helicopter. The helicopter will fly off and we win the mission. The first mission is ridiculously short and easy, even more so than the first missions in Command & Conquer. So that shows what I mean about how very high technology is introduced very early on in the campaigns in Red Alert, unlike Command and Conquer. Cruisers are the most powerful naval unit, Tesla coils are the most powerful base defense, and we see them starting from the very first mission in this game. Interesting difference compared to Command and Conquer, where the technology is introduced much more gradually.
Soviet aggression has increased tenfold already. We don't have the manpower to fight Stalin's armies on every front.
Commander, you did a fine job rescuing Einstein for us. Now, we are counting on you again. One of the passes we used for a supply route has been blocked by the Reds. A convoy from the 434th is due through in a matter of hours. The supplies they carry are critical to our war efforts. Nikos, what we have in that area to work with?
Not much, and time is against us.
You will have to make do. Clear the pass, so the convoy can get to safety. Their lives rest in your hands. Go!
Mission timer initialized. Reinforcements arrived.
So since the first mission was so incredibly short, we're going to do another one before we call it a video. Here we get an MCV, which deploys itself for us. The MCVs in Red Alert look like giant cement mixer trucks. I much prefer the higher tech look of the MCVs in Command and Conquer. In general, I prefer the Command and Conquer aesthetic, even though I do like the vaguely World War II/Cold War look of this game as well. So, interesting thing about this game, even though in some ways the premise is kind of cheesy, you know, Albert Einstein went back in time to kill Hitler, kind of a corny idea, the game takes itself pretty seriously. The cutscenes are not intentionally campy or anything. It just plays it straight. And I prefer that, to be honest, actually. I like this better than the very deliberately campy approach that Red Alert 2 takes. So I prefer the story in this game, for sure. I actually like the story in Red Alert 3 better than Red Alert 2, because it just took the camp and dialed it up to 11. And as long as you're going to go really campy, you might as well go all out with it. Now, I'm going to build a much more robust base than I need to complete this mission, because this base is going to get used again in Mission 4, verbatim, exactly the same as how we build it here. So I'm going to save myself some trouble by building a reasonably robust base here. That's going to make Mission 4 easier when we get there. Refineries take far longer to build in this game than they do in the original Command & Conquer because their build time is actually based on the full cost of 2,000 credits. Unlike Command & Conquer, where it's based on a build cost of 600 credits because it doesn't count the cost of the harvester. Although this makes more sense and is certainly better balanced for multiplayer, I actually prefer the faster refinery build time of CNC. It takes forever to get your economy set up when the refineries take so long to build. And you know, by forever I mean an extra 45 seconds, but near enough forever. Another balance change in Red Alert that I kind of prefer the way it's done in CNC is tanks are much, much faster in this game, which is a lot more realistic. The fact that tanks are about the same speed as infantry in Command & Conquer is ridiculous and utterly unrealistic. But I actually think it makes for better balance and better gameplay. Because even with as slow as they are, tanks are pretty overpowered in Command & Conquer. They're the best all-around units in the game, clearly, and it's no contest, really. The fact that tanks are so zippy in this game means that they are even more overpowered than they already were. And the tank rushes are just straight up overwhelmingly the best strategy for almost every situation. Which is not entirely ideal from a balance perspective. It gives you less incentive to bother with other units besides tanks.
Construction complete.
So, and in general, I just kind of like the slower, more methodical pace of the original Command & Conquer versus Red Alert's somewhat faster, more frenetic pace. None of that is to say that I don't absolutely love this game. I do. It's fantastic. And I enjoy almost every aspect about it, except for some of the old school issues like the bad pathing and stuff. But there are a number of ways in which I just feel that the original CNC was superior. And this is another trivially easy mission. Of course, it's only mission 2. Don't expect that it's going to be especially difficult, and it's not. So we're just face-rolling the enemy base here, taking care of the opposition easily. The 20-minute time limit we started with to clear the path for the convoy was way, way more than is needed to complete this mission. We'll go ahead and wipe out the enemy's ore truck, which starts out at half HP to make it easier to destroy. That's a nice little courtesy that the game gives us in early missions. Now in mission 4, we're going to be facing much stiffer opposition in the form of enemy armor and aircraft, which is why I'm preemptively training up a bunch of rocket soldiers for that mission. And this ore truck is going to single-handedly destroy my entire attacking force, because it's almost entirely infantry. So it's just going to squish them all. Good grief. I think that our men might appreciate some reinforcements. I'll send a couple of rangers. Rangers being jeeps. We cannot build rangers in this mission because we can't build a war factory. When we can build rangers, we're going to discover that they cost 600 credits, which is utterly ridiculous. 300 credits for a buggy and 400 credits for a Humvee in Command & Conquer was far more sensible and made the units at least kinda sorta worth building. Since Rangers are more expensive for no good reason because they weren't overpowered in CNC, and tanks have just become even better than they already were, it means that Rangers are a borderline worthless unit. They may be worth building 1 or 2 for scouting purposes because they're very fast, so you can zip around exploring the map quite easily with them. But aside from scouting purposes, there's essentially no reason to build Rangers. They're overpriced. And with tanks being so fast, they're very good at squishing infantry, so it's not as important to have anti-infantry forces along. So that's yet another way that I think CNC is superior. Odd change in the balance there. Now, the Allies are a guerrilla faction in this game. I guess the idea is that the European forces were kind of unprepared for war, so they don't have massive heavy military forces. They're almost more of a guerrilla force, and they have very light units for the most part. So they're kind of like Nod, essentially, from a gameplay perspective, despite being the good guys and Nod being the bad guys. By contrast, the Soviets have very heavy forces. They get heavy tanks, mammoth tanks. They don't really have any dedicated scouting units. They have the Tesla coil, which is a much heavier base defense. So they're gameplay-wise kind of more like GDI in terms of them having slower, heavier forces. The similarity of allies to Nod and the Soviets to GDI is a fact that I explored in a mod, the custom campaign I created for this game, which I called Red Alert Alternative. Feel free to search that up if you're interested. It has been very warmly received, and if I do say so myself, it's a pretty kick-ass custom campaign. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and make a save here, because the next upcoming mission, Allies 3, is probably the only mission where I'm actually going to do both variants of it, because they're different enough from each other to be interesting. So we're going to want to have a save here, so that we can go back and do both variations of the mission.
Mission saved.
Despite the fact that the Allies are a much lighter force, I don't actually think they're underpowered compared to the Soviets, contrary to most players' opinions.
Mission accomplished.
We'll have plenty of opportunity to explore the comparative merits of the two factions in this game. The fact that the Allied units are much cheaper than their Soviet counterparts and that they're faster, so that if you have decent micro, you can take advantage of that and have your units zip around and take less damage, really help to make them not underpowered despite being so much lighter than their Soviet counterparts. Anyway, that's going to do it for this first episode. Next up, we're going to do both variations of Allied Mission 3, and depending on how quickly we get through that, maybe Allied Mission 4 as well. We'll see. Hopefully, you'll join me for that, and I'll see you then.